testify.
Well, guys, here we are again with Karen Beltran, Yonkers mayor candidate, hoping that she will win this election.
Yes, for sure.
Karen, tell us, just to start this, tell me and tell our public, why are you running?
I'm running to change Yonkers for the better. We do need a change here in Yonkers after decades of the same political landscape in Yonkers. We're ready for a change here in Yonkers, just like nationwide, there's a trend towards that. Yonkers needs to be a movement and part of that. We want to make sure that our citizens are well represented here in Yonkers. We want to make sure that our education district, public school district improves. We want to make sure that the economic development that is happening in Yonkers is truly benefiting the people that reside and live in Yonkers. We want to make sure that anyone that wants to remain in Yonkers long-term can do that through affordable housing options for all. We want to make sure that our homeowners are able to afford their mortgage payments, their property taxes, making sure that the water rates stay the same. Quality of life issues are important in every community. We want to make sure that we maintain our public safety. And we are ready for a woman mayor here in Yonkers, and one that truly represents the community. I am Yonkers, I'm a part of Yonkers. I can relate to many of the voters in Yonkers from all parts of the city. So it's time for a change in Yonkers, and I want to be the candidate to bring that to the citizens of Yonkers.
Now, I'm going to tell you a little secret. I had a whole bunch of law questions to ask. But then I found out that you're a lawyer.
I am.
So I said, I better don't go there. Because then you're going to turn me around, and instead of you being the subject of the interview, I would be the subject of the interview. So we're going to stay, away from law.
Thank
but
you.
I know that you're big into education.
Yes.
You feel like the education is one of the most important things. Because once you have kids that are well educated, going to college, that solves a whole bunch of other social issues that we might have. And, but before I ask you the question, I'm going to ask you this. A lot of us, including I, we talk about this formula. Yonkers is not getting money. The formula. All these people in these rallies, they talk about this formula. I can guarantee you that 99% of the people of Yonkers don't know what the hell they're talking about. What formula is this? What does it mean? Can you explain?
So it's not so easy to explain, and
in a simple way.
Yes, but the formula is tied directly to the state budget. So that's related to how much money the state gives Yonkers for the Yonkers public schools. But our school is not only funded through state funding. The city also contributes to the educational system here in Yonkers. So it's a two-way funding. So the formula only relates to the state funding. And yes, there are problems with the formula, and there have been for years. That's not expected to change this year, although miracles can happen. And the legislators do have until June to perhaps make any changes. Being an education advocate for this long, I don't see that happening. But we do get one-shots from the state often to cover a lot of the gaps that we face year in and year out. So those are structural problems that we need to change, and that's the sort of thing that people need to know. It is a structural problem that shouldn't be fixed year in and year out by just plugging a hole by getting more money from the state in addition to the formula of what's given on a yearly basis, and also that the city has to contribute more towards the city budget as well.
Now you see one shots,
Yes.
plural. In my book, one shot, it's one time.
Right.
And this thing with this budget and education formula, for the longest that I live in Yonkers, and let me tell you, I live in Yonkers for about 40 years, and every year is the same song, and almost every year we get this one-shot deal.
Yes. And
What would you do different?
so the one-shot deals are frustrating for parents because the one-shot deals keeps us in status quo. It's not that the one-shot deals are money more than we need and we can start re-entering some of the programs that we need. Is one-shots are literally to keep us a status quo, and status quo, as we all know, is not enough because the current state of our schools is that it needs improvement. Everyone knows that. So when we're on a budget cycle that all we're doing is trying to save what we currently have, that's a no-win for everyone. Like you mentioned earlier, education is a critical tool for improvement of our society, of our community, of Yonkers itself, for the lives of our children and their families, because a lot of our families, we support each other. meaning that the children end up supporting their parents at some point, and we are close in a community that does that. And it's a critical component of our lives, and we need to make sure that we prioritize that. So first, we need to educate people about what the issues are. For example, what is the formula and how does it relate to what's happening now? The formula only, it's only regarding the money that we get from the state. Well, what about the monies that come from the city? Has that increased? Historically, was that something that was neglected and now we need to catch up? Those are the sort of things that we need to discuss, like you said, in a way for people to understand it so that everyone can advocate through different streams for the same thing, to improve our schools no matter what. You know, a lot of our parents feel like this is all complicated, it's confusing, but we elected people to figure it out. And that's what elected officials need to do. They need to figure it out and not rely on parents to go to Albany every year, to come to the public hearings to speak, because that has not changed anything. What needs to change is what decision makers have the opportunity to change. And I'm hoping to do that as mayor, to move the needle towards that.
So, you know, most of us know what the problem is. I know that we have a problem. I know that we have a problem with crime. I know that we have a problem with the homeless. I know that we have a problem with social injustice. I know all those problems. If I was to vote for you, is in the hopes that you will solve those problems. So now you told us about the problem with the education. Now tell me how you would solve that problem.
Yes, so we need to, again, educate people about what the problem is. A lot of people don't understand that the money that the city gets, the public schools get, is not only from the state, but from the city. So there has to be two advocacy efforts towards that.
No, Karen, I don't want to cut you off because we don't have much time. So you already told us about that.
Yes.
You told us that you need to educate. Okay, you educated me. Now I know what the formula is. But I still cannot resolve the issue.
Right.
But you as an elected official can. So what would you do any different than the past administration have done to fix the problem? I'm looking for the solution, for your platform.
Yes.
So people who are watching say, okay, she has a solution. She has a possible solution. So that's what I'm trying to aim at.
Yes, and a lot of the frustration comes from having been in this situation for so long, the public school district having been neglected for so long, that there is no easy solution. As far as the state, we do need to keep doing the same things we're doing. We do have a state delegation that's been very helpful, but that we can always push to do more, push the governor to do more, push our state delegation to do more on that front, to maybe change the formula or modify it so that Yonkers does get more money from the state. But we need to look internally at our city budget and make sure that there's enough funding there to give to the public school district, so that the public school district can actually add again all the services that we need. Status quo is that's not something we should be celebrating. We need more of that. So that is what I bring to the table, making sure that people know that what we're advocating for right now is to keep things as is, and we don't need to do that. And people need to really advocate to the mayor and to city council that we do need to increase revenues, and that increased revenue, whether that's from developers, from businesses, or from other parts of the city, needs to go towards what the priority is, and that's education.
Okay. So now let's move to a different subject, and let's just tie up in what you just said, development. Are you happy with the developments that we've been getting in Yonkers? Are you happy with the tax breaks that the current administration has been giving to investors in Yonkers? Are you happy that lots of those investors and builders are actually not hiring people from Yonkers? What would you do differently?
Yes, I'm not happy about any of that. I do think that any developer who's getting extensive incentives and tax breaks and other benefits to come to our city and develop, we welcome them, but they need to pay their part. They need to hire locally, they need to pay prevailing wages, they need to hire union workers, because those people that are obtaining these jobs, it all trickles right back to our families. These are families who that, if perhaps they have children in public schools, can supplement their children's education. If you have a good paying job, that's increasingly difficult for many of our parents in the public schools. So we need to make sure that we engage the developers and that they know ahead of time, if you want our incentives, then you do need to significantly give back to the community in obvious ways. in
Okay.
obvious ways, not just building a sidewalk in front of the building. That could be something that they were not mandated to do and they did, but that doesn't necessarily help the public school district, doesn't necessarily help the homeless situation. So we need to look for ways that it obviously benefits the community. And they have plenty of money to do that. I don't believe that if we do hire union workers for these projects, that if we do mandate community services, that no developer will touch Yonkers. We're right next to New York City. It's about location, location, location. I'm sure there are more developers out there that are willing to actually engage with Yonkers leadership to make sure everyone benefits.
Now, let me just bring this up. What you just said, it's actually not a secret and is not a formula. Because I think that is part of the deal. When you take tax breaks, you're supposed to do A, B, and C. Okay, Karen, I will do A, B, and C. I will hire within Yonkers. I will do this and I will do that. We sign up the deal. 6 months go by, and I start hiring cheap labor from out of state. How would you address that? Because it has happened. We have the old jailhouse that tons of promises were done, lower prices, tax breaks, it's going to be a center for the art community where they can
Right.
publish. Once the deal was done, that never happened. The deal is signed, he owns the property. How would you plan to enforce when an investor goes back on his word?
The city has a law department. That should be enforced that way. If the
So what are you
leadership,
saying?
if the leadership is prioritizing enforcing contracts, then they should enforce the contracts. I don't know what that specific contract said, but if it did mandate, or if there was a community benefit, specific community benefit in there, and the developer is not doing that, then there's contractual ways to force them to do that.
So City Hall is not enforcing, I guess.
I don't know the
Because-
particulars about that deal, but the city always has an option through their through legal means to enforce any contract with the
I
city.
use that deal as an example. Not long ago, we did a little story. We went to some of the buildings that were under construction in Yonkers. And we talked to people that were actually working in those buildings.
Okay.
Small percentage from Yonkers. You could see the license plates out of state. You could see that stuff that came from those buildings, building material from out of state. Don't we have things within Yonkers, within our state? People right here in Yonkers need to work.
Yes,
A lot of homeless, I'm not talking about mental illness people. There is a lot of people in Yonkers that are homeless just because they don't have the income that will help them pay rent that are very expensive. Well, if they could work on those jobs. Okay, I'm not saying give a job to somebody who's not qualified,
Right.
but a labor, why not? And it's tons. So you would
Why
say,
not?
why not?
why not? And that comes from entering into agreements, labor agreements with the developers.
And enforcing those agreements.
And enforcing them, of course.
Yeah.
It can't just be in name only. That's not what city government should be doing. If we're prioritizing things, then we need to set in motion the things that will get us to that end goal. The mayor has had 8 years to accomplish many of those things. And what's good is good, and what needs improvement, and someone else can do it. It doesn't have to be the current administration. It's time for a change in Yonkers.
Okay, with that line, the mayor had 8 years, so let's move into term limits. Does he deserve another term? How do you feel about this term extension?
I oppose term limits extension
Why?
in general, because I believe that the process was flawed. It should have been a referendum by the people, and you let the people decide if they want to extend term limits from 2 to 3. That's the way it had been done previously, and that's the way it should have been done now. I think it's pretentious to believe or to say or visualize, verbalize that one leader can only lead the city. We have so many people in Yonkers, so many dedicated people, whether they're already in the political landscape or not. This would have been an opportunity to engage our voters in new ways and see who wants to vie for the mayoral position, and to engage voters and have discussions about what's best for our city under new leadership.
So, Karen, let me get this right. Are you against term limits, or are you against the way the term limit extension went about?
I'm pro term limits. I think term limits are good. because we do need change in leadership every so often. The amount of terms is up for debate. It depends, right? Because, for example, there are some positions that do not have any term limits, and that's just been the case forever. So I'm not necessarily proposing any changes to those positions, but I'm talking about in particular for mayor and city council. It should have been done as a referendum by the people like it had been done in the past.
No, that
So-
that I understand.
Yeah,
But
so-
my point was, are you in favor of an extension in term limit? Because we understand that you are against the way it was done. It
Yeah.
should have been done differently.
Yes,
Okay, but not necessarily that you oppose another term, because the people have the last word. If you're not doing a good job, I can vote you out.
yes. If we had a referendum, a vote by the people, I probably would have voted no
Okay.
to extend the term limits. I think that 8 years is sufficient, and I think we have enough good leadership in Yonkers and people that want to govern in that top spot, that 8 years is enough to do that. You gotta give people of different perspectives an opportunity. For example, here in Yonkers, there's never been a woman mayor, and why not? It's about time that we have that. Yonkers is over 60% minority city, and there's never been a person of color in that top spot. And really, and frankly, there aren't enough of us either at the commissioner levels. So that has to change, and this is my way of putting that idea forward and visualizing that and actually making that happen.
Yeah. So if elected, you wouldn't just be the first woman to occupy that office, but you would be also the first Latino woman to occupy that office. Well, let me tell you, we have a tremendous amount of Latino people.
Yes,
And if you are able to motivate them to come out and vote that day, who knows?
that's right.
So the key thing is get the people out and vote. Don't take for granted. So let's just for a second talk about the importance of voting. Tell the people how important it is to come out and vote. Not just talk about it, not just complain about it, but they have the power of deciding who is going to lead Yonkers for the next term. So let's talk just for a few seconds, the importance of voting.
It's crucial. Voting is crucial, especially in a race like this where we're trying to, from a grassroots level, change a whole city and make something possible that's never been even tried before by any regular citizen of Yonkers. We need to make sure that people are aware that there's even an election. We need to get as many people registered as possible because we do have until May 31st to get new people registered here in Yonkers. And it really is a movement. On my part, my way to engage voters is to talk to a person one-to-one and only hope that once they're educated, once they get to know me, that they are motivated enough to come out and vote on Tuesday, June 25th. And that's what a grassroots effort is, engaging people one-on-one and making sure that they come out and vote on that date. We're happy here in Yonkers that there are other primaries also taking place, and I'm hoping that that brings up the voter turnout as well, because we need that. In the last primary election that happened here in Yonkers in 2011, there were only about 7,500 voters that came out and vote, and we have almost
200.
60. Well, we have six primaries,
Okay.
so we have almost 60,000 registered Democrats in Yonkers, and in
Yeah.
that last election, only about 7,500 came out to vote. And that can happen again. We really has to be a community effort to engage more people to actually come out and vote, because those are the people that are deciding these elections.
I agree with you. I think it's a shame that in a city of 200 plus residents, only a few thousand come to vote, and the
Right.
elections are won by 100, 200
Yes.
votes.
Yes.
It's just unacceptable.
Yes.
But then after the election, we have a whole bunch of complainers. You should be doing this, you should do that. What about you do what you're supposed to be doing? What about you coming out and vote? That's the day we decide. Now, homeless. You know, we have a lot of homeless in Yonkers. Shelter, it's about to close down, I believe, June, July, something, around that time. There is a lot of homeless people that come from other cities
Yes.
around Yonkers, to Yonkers, and then it becomes a Yonkers problem. And if you are elected, or whoever is elected, will own that problem. How would you be dealing with it?
Yeah. So we need to work closely with county government on that because they do also share the responsibility. We need to make sure that whatever facility we enter into any new contracts with is long-term and that it's safe. And we need to make sure that there's a way out of homelessness for a lot of our homeless population, whether they reside in Yonkers or not, just overall, right? Because as a citizen, you don't care just about the homeless in Yonkers. It's a county-wide issue, it's a statewide issue, it's a nationwide issue. So you mentioned mental illness earlier, so we need to make sure that there are quality community services that can help people with that. We need to make sure there are enough jobs, even entry-level jobs, for a lot of the families that can actually get out of homelessness. Because as you said, it's not only single people who are homeless, there are plenty of homeless families as well with children, and even children in the Yonkers public schools. And we really need a community effort that may involve not just the city, not just the county, but also agencies to actually help people get out of that situation and stay out of that situation, because it can be a vicious cycle for some of the homeless families and individuals here in Yonkers.
Yep.
So again, my plan would be to really prioritize that and work with whomever we need to actually make that happen, making sure that we engage all the concerned citizens in Yonkers that care deeply, like it sounds like you do, and I've met other people that care deeply about the issue, to really come up with solutions to this or for ways to improve the situation. There's a lot of interested people out there with good ideas that I've met during this campaign.
Now, homeless, I also associate some homeless folks with mental illness.
Yes.
A lot of suicides. Not just on the homeless, homeless, mental illness within the homeless, mental illness within our own family nucleus, 12 years olds killing themselves, committing suicide. About an hour ago, a woman jumped from the overpass on McLean Avenue to 87, and I'm sure that the intent was not just to jump, was probably to commit suicide. So we have a lot of mental illness issue. How important it is for you? How would you address it?
It's very important to me, and it's very important to a lot of the parents that I met throughout the years in Yonkers. And that's why education is one of my passions, because education is not just about academics. It's making sure that our children are well taken care of holistically, and that includes making sure that they have someone to go to during the school day if they have a problem. That could be a psychologist or social worker. And really, we don't have that opportunity for children to do that and to help our families do that. That is one of the major complaints, that we don't have enough pupil support services in our public schools to help on that end. I mean, we shouldn't have any wait lists in any of the mental health treatment facilities here in Yonkers. There should be plenty, and it should be accessible to all. So one of my platforms is to making sure that people know about the community services, and that those community services are quality community service, and that they make it easy and accessible for people to actually walk in and use. I mean, there are state agencies, there's county agencies, and very local, micro-local agencies, and they all should be talking to each other to make sure that they help the kids and families, whether that's in the school district or outside or both.
Okay. Now, since we just mentioned public schools and a support system within the public schools,
Yes.
now let's move into crime, okay? And let's start with crime where children are killing children, okay? We have seen in Yonkers in the last few months, 15-year-old shooting 18, 16 shooting 16. We are seeing more and more of children committing murder and violent crimes. What is the problem? Is this that the children are having children? It's a society. It's a problem with the society. It's video games. It's education. What is it?
Yes. It's a lot of things. I think it starts with education and educating children from the very, very beginning. We need to make sure that there are safety nets in place, whether that's the district, like I said, the school district, or community agencies, that they're aware and can catch some of the mental illness or some of the other societal issues happening in their families, and help the families early on. If you're talking about a specific crime or a specific case, I don't know those families, but there's a lot there. It's not just one thing, I find. My work is in family court, so I'm very familiar with the many issues that one family can have. And it's not easy, but again, what I've noticed is that education can be a critical tool in that, and that there needs to be a partnership between the families, the schools, and outside agencies. The children are only in school from 8 to 3, or whatever the school hours are for that particular school. What happens after school?
PAL, YWCA,
Exactly.
they have tons of programs.
Exactly. And what happens on the weekends? Can a school stay open later? Can there be mental health facilities and other programs in our school buildings after school and on weekends that families can use? If families are not using those services, then what are the mechanisms for us to maybe check on those families? What if a child is absent from school too long? We don't even have truancy officers to go check on that.
I understand that you are a Latina from Colombia, correct?
That's correct.
I'm an African, born and raised in Africa. And let me tell you, when I was growing up, I didn't have that many programs. I know a lot of Africans in Mozambique that could not go past the second or third grade because the government back then wanted to keep the African people ignorant so they could be controlled. Because you don't have any education, you are easily manipulated.
That's right.
But I didn't see them killing people. I didn't see them doing violent crimes. Never heard of such a thing. So aren't we finding an excuse for the crime that we see here? I can understand that I commit a burglary to get something that I cannot afford. I can understand that. If I have an education, then I can get a job and I can afford it. But when I kill somebody or I commit a violent crime, it's not because I want something, it's because I have a violent instinct. Education would not resolve that problem.
And like I said, sometimes it's not just about education, it's about mental illness. It could be a bunch of issues joined together. Without knowing a particular family, I can't really comment on
In general, we're talking about in general
terms. But
terms.
in general, families have more than one issue. It's not just one thing. Our families are struggling, and different people in our families are struggling that affect other people in our families. It has to do a lot with the economy. It has a lot to do with the public school services. It has a lot to do with a lot of things. So we need to make sure that we cover our bases all around. Again, Yonkers is relatively a safe city. I was just with the commissioner at a meeting at the Power Lab last week or 2 weeks ago where he explained that. And it's true, we are one of the safest, largest cities in the nation. But that doesn't mean that we're immune from crimes like that happening. And of course, no one wants any crime in our cities, but that's unavoidable.
That's reality.
That's reality, but you're right. There's no reason why we can't analyze, for example, a particular crime and figure out, okay, what went wrong here? What is it? There could be a lot of reasons for that. I don't know, it's unfortunate, but the best we can do is try to make everything as good as possible and make every service accessible to as many people as possible. And parents for children once too, so again, that's why education is important. If we start from the beginning, we can start breaking those cycles of poverty and cycles of bad habits.
Okay. Well, Karen, I wish I could sit here with you all
Yes.
day long and ask you a whole bunch of questions.
We'll do it again.
Because questions is something that I have. But I hope that to be able to speak with you again,
Yes.
Before the election, so we can talk about other subjects. So to end this, let me give you an opportunity to make a closing statement. Maybe there is something that I forgot to ask you that you want to bring it up. So take this opportunity to tell those that are watching you, who is Karen Beltran?
Thank you so much. Again, you can find more information about me on my website, KarenBeltran4Mayor.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter as well, and I welcome any comments from the community to get to know me if you have particular questions. We are looking for volunteers because this is a grassroots effort. We want to make sure that as many people know that there is still time to register, that there is an election on Tuesday, June 25th, and really this is an opportunity to engage our community and actually make a change here in Yonkers. So please join the movement along with me. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, Karen, thank you very much for taking the time to sit with us.
Thank you.
I wish you the best.
Thank you.
I don't think your winning has anything to do with luck. It has all to do with your hard work and, you know, and people believe in you that you can do the things that you promised.
Thank
So
you.
guys, stay tuned on Yonkers Voice. We will bring you another episode soon. So as always, we do not support, we do not endorse any candidate. The only agenda that we have is to bring you the information to tell you who is who on the political arena, so you can make the decision on who you're going to vote for June 25th.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more.